Are you fed up with dieting? I'm not surprised. My name's Mike Murphy. I'm a nutritional therapist, and today I'm going to tell you why diets don't work. If you've ever been on a diet to lose a few pounds, chances are it might have worked. You felt good about the results, and then all the weight you lost somehow found its way back to you, and you're thinking, how'd that happen? Well, you probably know how it happened, or you think you know, but do you really? You see, for decades, we've all been told that to lose weight, it's a simple matter of cutting calories. The idea is to consume fewer calories than you're actually using so that you tap your own fat reserves to make up the difference. It's called maintaining a negative energy balance. To use a banking analogy, it's spending more money than you're making, so you're forced to use your savings. And technically, it's true that if you consume fewer calories than you burn for long enough, you will lose weight. But there's only one problem. It doesn't work in the long run. The studies on dieting are pretty clear, and they show that 5 out of 6 people who lose weight by cutting calories end up putting all the weight back on and then some, usually within about 6 to 12 months. So why does that happen? Well, to tell this story, we have to wind the clock back a few years. You see, humans evolved over a couple of million years in an environment where food was not always available. In fact, we were far more likely to not eat every day than we were to sit down to 3 meals. And so we developed a very specialized energy storage system known as body fat that was kind of like our own personal battery pack that we could flip over to whenever we ran out of gas. And because of this uncertainty of when the next meal was coming, we also developed a very complex system to manage the calories in versus calories out. Now, whenever we don't eat for a few days, or there just isn't quite enough food to meet our energy needs, our brain triggers the release of a series of hormones and other brain chemicals that are designed to trigger corrective feeding behavior to try to make up for lost calories. So we get hungry and start looking for food. And when we do find food, these same chemicals actually encourage us to overeat in order to recharge the battery pack. See, this is ancient survival biology, and we would not have survived as a species without it. Think about it. If you went through a period of starvation and then came across food again, if you just picked up where you left off, you'd eventually wither away. It's actually crucial for our survival to not only meet the current energy need, but to restock the larder, so to speak, and as quickly as possible, so you can survive the next famine, which, by the way, could happen tomorrow for all we knew. So that's the calories in piece. The other side of this equation is to control the calories out, otherwise called your energy expenditure. So there are other hormones that get on the act to slow us down, kind of turn down the thermostat, so to speak, so that we use less energy. And so what I'm saying here is that we're biochemically encouraged to move less and eat more in the face of calorie restriction. And by the way, this energy balancing act, it's all managed without us having to think about it. And if the system's working well, it's very precise. It might surprise you to know that if you consume just 25 calories more each day than you actually burn, the end result is morbid obesity. Sure, it takes time, but if it's maintained, that's the end result. And that's called maintaining a positive energy balance, by the way. In other words, you're making more money than you're spending, and so you're able to save for a rainy day. It's actually quite an elegant and perfectly orchestrated system that evolved to keep us from dying. And as I said, it happens without us having to think about it. After all, we're not all bookkeepers tracking every step we take and every single calorie we consume to make sure that it all balances out each day before we hit the sack. Our brain, with the help of a few other organs, takes care of the bookkeeping in the background. And so when you regain all of that weight you lost from your diet, just know that it's not your fault. It's not just a matter of your willpower failing. Willpower isn't designed to be that strong. It's ancient survival biology at play, and in my experience, and possibly yours, the biology usually wins. So the secret to weight loss is to actually get out in front of those hormones and eat in a way that prevents that ancient biology that drives us to eat more and move less from kicking in. So how do you do that? Well, it starts firstly by losing the word dieting from your vocabulary. By definition, the word dieting is associated with restriction and being temporary. So it's kind of logical that any weight loss that might result would also be temporary. Instead of dieting, it's about learning to eat in a way that balances hormones so that cravings disappear and we become fat burners instead of fat storers. And that means no more calorie counting. For decades, calories have been hailed as the most important thing to think about when it comes to choosing which food to eat, as if it's actually more important than the nutrition that's in the food. It's been more about the quantity than the quality. But I'm here to tell you, when you focus on the quantity takes care of itself. When you focus on calories, it generally means low fat because fat has more than twice the calories than carbs and proteins. But here's the thing. Focusing on calories completely misses the fact that not all calories are created equal. And that is to say that 100 calories of fat has a very different hormonal effect on the body than 100 calories of carbohydrate or protein. And when it comes to whether you're gaining weight or losing weight, hormones call all the shots. Now, there are at least 25 different hormones and brain chemicals that are involved in that automatic bookkeeping effort to balance your energy intake with your energy expenditure. In other words, maintaining your weight. Some hormones worthy of mention in this short video are ghrelin, which is a powerful appetite stimulant, and it's made by the cells of your stomach when your stomach is empty. We know that after people lose weight, we find that their ghrelin levels are actually elevated for a period of time in kind of a bookkeeping attempt to get you to regain the weight you lost. Leptin is another key hormone that's actually an appetite suppressant, and it's made by our fat cells to signal to the brain the status of our fat reserves, kind of the status of our savings account. Now, in obesity, we find that people become leptin resistant, so that the brain isn't getting that signal that there's plenty of fat on board, and therefore searching for food isn't really crucial. But of all the hormones involved in the weight management balancing act, it's insulin that is perhaps the most important. Insulin is called the fat storage hormone. And when it's up, we store fat. In fact, we can't store fat without it. When insulin's down, we burn fat. And let's face it, when we're talking about weight loss, the real goal is to burn body fat. It's only when insulin is down that our fat cells get the message that they can release their stored calories. And when it's high, it's like the PIN code to our savings account doesn't work. Insulin's job is to protect fat. And so that begs the question, what foods elevate insulin? Well, carbohydrates elevate insulin the most. Protein, not so much. Fat doesn't move the insulin needle. So right about now, you're probably thinking, hold on a minute. For decades, we've been told that fat is the bad guy, and the key to weight loss is to reduce calories. And the best way to do that is to follow a low-fat diet, which then means a diet higher in carbohydrates. But the problem with low-fat, high-carb diets is that not only do they elevate blood sugar, which increases insulin and makes us store more fat, but they then lead to increased hunger and cravings, which make us eat more over the course of a day, and they also slow down our metabolism so that we burn fewer calories, and that ultimately makes it harder and harder to keep losing, and eventually the weight all comes back. Is it any wonder that obesity rates have risen steadily since the low-fat guidelines were introduced in the 1980s? I want to tell you about a study from 2012 that set out to measure whether the quality of calories going in affected the quantity of calories going out. So they took a group of people and measured what happened to the amount of calories they burned in a day simply by changing the ratio of carbs to fats. The first diet was a low-fat, high-carb diet where 20% of the calories were from fat and 60% were from carbs. The second was an equal carb-to-fat ratio of 40% each. And the third diet was a high-fat, low-carb diet where 60% of the calories were from fat and only 10% were from carbs. And obviously, 30% of the calories were then from protein. The study found that the high-fat, low-carb diet produced a much higher metabolism than the low-fat diet, which had actually slowed down their metabolism. And the difference was a whopping 325 calories per day between the two diets. That's the equivalent of an hour's worth of moderate exercise activity without lifting a finger. So not only does a higher fat diet remove the hunger and the cravings that make you eat more, but it also appears to fool the ancient survival biology that makes you move less. Certainly sounds like a winning combination for tackling the obesity epidemic. So, the real reason why diets don't work over the long run is that they rely on willpower and restriction rather than by eating in a way that gets biology on your side. The aim of the game is to keep insulin levels relatively low most of the time. You can do this by balancing your meals so that there is a good portion of clean protein and healthy fats at every meal, all the colorful vegetables you can eat, and a small to moderate portion of starch depending on your activity levels. Now, the more active you are, the more starch you can afford. But the starch is always optional. The protein, fats, and veg are not. The other important rule of thumb is 3 meals a day, 4 to 6 hours apart, no snacking. Why no snacking, you ask? Well, remember, we only burn fat when our insulin levels are low. When we eat, we make insulin, the fat storage hormone. So if we snack throughout the day, we don't let our insulin levels come down and we never burn fat. And by only eating 3 times a day, again, we're giving our insulin levels a chance to come down between meals. And I guarantee you, if you make your meals count, you won't want to snack. If you get hungry between meals, ask yourself, did I eat enough? Did I include enough protein and fat? Or did I eat too many carbs? It's usually one of those 3 things. That's it. Those are the only 2 principles to follow. 3 meals a day without snacks and making sure your plate is balanced with protein, fat, veg, and keep the starches and the sugar to a minimum. If you can make those principles habits, your weight will balance naturally. Remember, if you get the quality right, the quantity takes care of itself. Now, there are other factors involved that can undermine your attempts to lose weight. I'm talking about poor sleep, high stress, and a lack of exercise, but those are topics for another day. Remember to please like and subscribe to our channel, and until next time, you take care.